I was on the cold kitchen floor, blood dripping from the corner of my mouth, my body trembling from the last blow my son had given me. He looked down at me with disgust, not an ounce of care left in his eyes. The same boy I carried in my belly for 9 long months. The same boy I raised with tired hands and an aching back. Now he stood over me like a stranger. No, like a monster I had unknowingly raised with my own hands. His wife stood behind him, arms crossed, saying nothing. She had wanted me out for years. And now, with a slap and a shove, my own son had finally shown me the door. I said, "Get out. You don't belong here anymore," he yelled. I tried to stand, but my legs gave way. The room spun. He bent down and grabbed my arm tight, too tight. And like I was nothing, he dragged me toward the door. My slippers slipped off along the way. I heard my bones crack when he pushed me out. Then I heard the door slam. Just like that, I was outside, in the cold, with nothing but my nightgown and pain. I sat on the porch trying to breathe through the tears. My heart was breaking in slow motion, but my spirit, it refused to die. That was the day I truly knew what it meant to be broken, beaten, but not defeated. But how did it all get to that point? Let me tell you from the beginning. I was just a simple woman from a small town. My name is Grace. I never had much growing up, but I had dreams. I wanted to be a nurse to help people. But life had other plans. I got pregnant at 19, and the father disappeared the moment I told him. My parents were disappointed, but they still took me in. I promised them I'd still make something of myself. I gave birth to my first child, John. He was beautiful. He had these tiny little fingers that wrapped around mine like he never wanted to let go. I looked at him and swore I'd give him the best life I could. I didn't know then that the same hands that clung to mine would one day push me out like garbage. I worked as a cleaner during the day and took care of him at night. We shared everything: food, clothes, stories, dreams. When I finally got a second job at the community center, I saved up enough to rent a small one-room house. It was tight, but it was ours. And every night, I sang John to sleep with a lullaby I made up just for him. He used to say, "Mama, your voice is like warm soup." As he grew, I noticed he was different. He was smart, very smart, but also quiet. He didn't like being corrected, not even by me. Sometimes, when I told him no, he'd stare at me with this coldness that didn't belong to a child. I ignored it. I thought maybe he was just strong-minded. Isn't that what we pray for? That our children grow up strong? When he turned 13, things started changing. He became rude, withdrawn, and angry. I thought it was just the teenage years. But then he began saying hurtful things. "You're a failure," he said one day when I couldn't buy him new shoes. "You're not even a real mother." That hurt, but I smiled. I thought, he'll grow out of it. He doesn't mean it. But he didn't grow out of it. He grew into it. I gave him everything, every coin I had, every drop of sweat, every prayer. I worked so hard to send him to college. I skipped meals. I walked to work. I sold my wedding ring. And when he graduated, oh, I was so proud. I clapped louder than anyone at his graduation ceremony. I told the world, "That's my son." I raised him alone. He got a good job, bought a car, then a house, got married. His wife never liked me, but I stayed out of her way. I just wanted to be close to my son and the grandkids. One day he called and said, "Mama, why don't you move in with us? You're getting old. Let us take care of you." I cried tears of joy. Finally, I thought I could rest. After all the years of struggle, maybe I'd find peace under my own son's roof. First, it was good. The kids loved me. I cooked, I cleaned, I told them stories. My son would come back from work and say, "Thanks, Mama. You make this place feel like home." But slowly things started changing. His wife began leaving notes around the house, little things like, "Don't use too much water," or "Stay out of the living room." I thought I was imagining things until one day she looked me in the eye and said, "You've overstayed your welcome." I told John about it. He said, "Mama, just ignore her. You know how she is." But he started coming home later and talking less. The love in his eyes began to fade. Then the accidents started. One day, I was mopping the kitchen floor when I slipped on oil someone had spilled. I hurt my hip badly. No one helped me up. I lay there for nearly an hour before the youngest grandchild found me. Another time, my food was thrown in the trash. When I asked why, they said, We thought it was spoiled. But I had just cooked it. I wanted to leave, but where would I go? I had no money. No house. My health wasn't good. I depended on them. And that was my biggest mistake. Then came the day that changed everything. It was my birthday. I had saved a small piece of chocolate I'd been hiding for the grandkids. I made some rice and beans. I decorated the small corner of my room with old ribbons I found in the drawer. I waited for them all to come in and say happy birthday. They didn't. Instead, my son came in drunk. Angry. He said I was a burden. He said I was draining his home. And before I could even understand what was happening, he hit me. For the first time in my life, my son raised his hand against me. I gasped. Not because of the pain, but because of the betrayal. I cried out, "John, please." But he didn't stop. That's how I ended up on that cold floor. Bruised, crying, and confused. But as I sat on the porch that night, something inside me rose. I didn't know where I would go. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing: I was not going to die like this. And just when I thought the worst was over, I heard the front door creak open behind me. Someone was stepping outside, fast, heavy steps. It wasn't John. It was his wife. She was holding something in her hand, and her face was full of rage. Her shadow fell over me before I could even get up from the porch. My knees were still weak, and my ribs ached from the fall. I looked up, squinting through the tears and pain. There she stood, my son's wife, Rachel. Eyes wide, mouth tight, holding something heavy wrapped in a black cloth. She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "You're not leaving until I say so," she hissed. "You think you'll walk out of here and go tell people lies about us?" I was trembling. "I don't want trouble. I just want to go." "You already brought trouble the day you stepped into this house," she snapped, unwrapping the cloth to reveal a rolling pin, thick, wooden, the kind used to flatten dough. "Please, Rachel," I pleaded, clutching my side. She didn't hit me. Not then. But she leaned forward and said something that sent more chills through me than any slap ever could. "If you leave, Grace, make sure you leave in silence. Or I promise you, I'll bury your name so deep, even your grandchildren will forget you ever existed." Then she turned and slammed the door shut. I was left outside, barefoot, bleeding, and broken. The night was growing cold. My breath came out in puffs of mist. I crawled to the edge of the porch, curled up beside a dying flower pot, and held myself tight. My body shook, but my mind had already started to fight. I couldn't die here. I couldn't let this be the end of my story. By dawn I had made up my mind. I needed to get up. I needed to go. Somewhere. Anywhere. Away from this house that was never a home. When morning came, I pushed myself up, leaning against the porch railing for support. The sun peeked out behind the trees, giving me just enough light to see the quiet road ahead. I limped down the steps and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. The first house I came across was 3 streets away. I knocked on the door, and a kind elderly woman answered. I asked to use her phone. My hand shook so much I could barely dial. The only number I remembered by heart was Sister Martha's from church. She picked up. "Hello. Martha, it's Grace," I said, voice cracking. "Please. I need help." She came with her husband within the hour. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh Lord, Grace. What did they do to you?" "They took me to their home, fed me warm soup, cleaned my wounds, and gave me a soft bed. I hadn't slept that peacefully in years. But even there, in safety, the pain didn't go away. The betrayal lived in my bones. Martha tried to talk me into reporting it. You have to speak up, Grace. This isn't just abuse, it's evil. But I was scared. If I reported him, what would happen to the kids? Would they suffer? Would Rachel twist the story and make me look crazy? The fear tied my mouth shut. Instead, I started to heal quietly. Every morning I prayed. I read my Bible. I whispered my pain into the pillow at night. Martha helped me get back on my feet slowly. She got me a small job at a community canteen washing dishes. It wasn't much, but it gave me purpose again. Then one day, while walking back from the market, I saw a poster on a notice board. It was for a local storytelling event at the Women's Center. The theme was Your Truth, Your Voice. Something stirred inside me. Maybe it was time to speak. I wrote my story down on a piece of old paper, shaking the whole time. Not everything. Just the beginning. just enough to let the pain bleed a little. When I stood in front of the small crowd that day, my knees almost gave out. But as I spoke, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Eyes that listened. Hearts that cared. After I finished, a woman in the back stood up. She was crying. "Thank you," she said. "Your story, it's mine too." And just like that, the shame began to melt. Over the next few weeks, I was invited to speak at other women's meetings. I started helping at the shelter. I cooked for the girls, cleaned their rooms, and told them bedtime stories. They called me Mama Grace. Slowly, I found family again. Not the one I birthed, but the one I built. But even with all this new light, a shadow still followed me. I hadn't seen my grandkids in over a year. Not a call. Not a visit. Nothing. I'd leave small gifts with Martha for them, knitted hats, toys, little notes. But I never knew if they reached them. Until one cold Saturday morning, as I was sweeping the porch of the shelter, a small voice called out from behind the gate, "Mama Grace?" I turned. And there she was. My eldest granddaughter, Lily. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped closer. "Mama, Daddy said you left us. But I don't believe him. I don't believe him anymore." I dropped the broom. The past, the pain, the heartbreak, it all came rushing back. I opened my arms. She ran into them. We cried together for what felt like forever. That moment gave me hope. But little did I know that same evening, something was already brewing back at my son's house. Something that would shake the ground under my feet all over again. Because just as I was starting to heal, Rachel made her next move. And this time she came for my name. The next morning, I was helping fold laundry at the shelter when Sister Martha rushed in holding her phone tightly in one hand, her eyes wide with worry. "Grace," she said, voice trembling, "you need to see this." She handed me the phone. I took it slowly, already sensing that something was wrong. On the screen was a video posted online. I tapped play with shaky fingers. And there it was. A blurry clip of me at the Women's Center, telling my story. But something was off. My words had been cut up. Twisted. The video had been edited to make it seem like I was lying. The captions across the screen read, "Old woman exposed. Fake storyteller accuses innocent son of abuse for attention." I blinked in disbelief. Then I noticed the comment section. "Shame on her. She probably just wants money. Another bitter old woman trying to ruin a man's life." My hand shook so hard the phone slipped and fell to the ground. Martha picked it up and wrapped her arms around me. "They twisted your truth, Grace. This is evil." It didn't take me long to figure out who was behind it. Rachel. She had taken my voice, my healing, and turned it into poison. I spent the rest of the day in silence. My chest felt heavy. My head hurt. All I could think was why? Why go this far? That evening, Lily returned to visit again. I didn't tell her about the video. I didn't want to poison her heart too. She brought me a drawing. A picture of me and her holding hands. She smiled proudly. But then she said something that broke me again. "Daddy says you're not my real grandma anymore. He says you left us for strangers." I knelt in front of her and looked into her big brown eyes. "Sweetheart," I whispered. "Sometimes grown-ups say things when they're hurt or confused. But I will always be your grandma. No one can take that away." She smiled and hugged me. But deep inside, I knew this was far from over. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, the voices from the internet ringing in my ears. I felt naked, exposed, misunderstood. Again, my name had become a lie. My story a target. The next morning, the shelter director called me into her office. "Grace," she began gently, "we love having you here. But this video, it's going viral. We're getting calls. People think we allowed someone dishonest to speak under our name. We need to pause your appearances for now." I nodded quietly. I understood. Even the people who believed in me were now pulling back. Fear does that to folks. But I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at Rachel. She had made her point clear. If I tried to rise, she'd drag me back down. But what she didn't know was that I'd already hit rock bottom once. And I had no plans of going back. Instead of hiding, I found another way. The next Sunday at church, I stood up during testimony time. The whole room went quiet. Most of them had seen the video. I looked at every single one of them and said, Yes, that video is about me. Yes, they twisted my words. But I will not apologize for surviving. I will not stop speaking just because someone wants me silenced. If that means I lose friends, fine. If that means I walk alone, fine. But I'd rather stand in truth than live in a lie. The room remained silent for a while. Then slowly one woman stood. Then another. Then another. One by one, women who had once whispered their pain started standing. No one clapped. No one shouted. But I saw it in their eyes, solidarity. That day, I walked out of church with my head held high. But the fight wasn't over. Later that week, I received an envelope in the mail.
No stamp.
No return address. Inside it was a letter, handwritten in Rachel's messy scrawl. You think you're strong? Let's see how strong you are when the law is involved. You're about to regret opening your mouth. You've been warned. And stapled to the letter was a copy of a court summons. I was being sued for defamation. Rachel and John were taking me to court for telling my own story. The paper slipped from my hand as my knees gave way. Sister Martha caught me before I hit the ground. But nothing could stop what was coming next. 'Cause now, I had a legal battle on my hands. And the people I once called family were ready to destroy me completely. My heart stopped for a moment. I looked straight into Clara's eyes, trying to read what she meant. My sweet granddaughter, the one I raised, fed, bathed, prayed for, stood there with a blank face, like she wasn't even talking to her own blood. What did you say? I whispered. Clara's voice was calm, too calm. We did worse than just take your name off the documents. My chest tightened. Clara, what did you do? She looked around the hallway and took a small step closer. I shouldn't even be telling you this. But I want you to stop. I want all this fighting to end. You're not going to win. Win. I gasped. You think this is a game? It's not a game, she said. But it's already done. You were erased months ago. The will. That's not even the only thing we touched. My knees grew weak. What else? Clara paused for a moment, then said in a whisper. We changed Peter's bank documents. We moved all the savings before we had the house signed over. I shook my head. No. No, your grandfather left that account for emergencies. He told me. He told me it was for the family if anything ever happened. Clara nodded. It was. But Dad and Mom used the money to invest in the new estate in Riverstone. That's how we got the new business license. That's how we paid for my tuition. You used the emergency fund? Without telling me. It was already in Dad's name, she said flatly. And we couldn't wait for you to understand. You're too emotional, Grandma. You live in the past. I felt like the floor moved under my feet. Then why are you telling me this now? I whispered, my throat dry. Clara hesitated. Because I see you fighting. And honestly, it's tiring. We just want to move on. And I'm tired of pretending. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You're tired? You. I said. You've only lived 22 years. I raised you, girl. I washed your diapers. I carried you on my back when your feet were too small for the market. And you're telling me you're tired? She blinked, and for a second I thought I saw a flicker of shame. But it disappeared quickly. The court officer called for everyone to return. Clara turned and walked away without another word. I stood frozen, feeling the sting of betrayal crawling through my bones like cold wind. Inside the courtroom, the lawyer representing David began presenting their documents. Lies coded in legal language. Your Honor, the plaintiff, Grace Thompson, has no legal ownership under the current title. She has not contributed financially to the property in over 15 years. And the transfer was done with full consent of all parties involved. I stood up. That's a lie. I was never told. I never signed anything. The judge banged his gavel. You will have your time to speak. When it was our turn, Mr. Thomas stepped forward with calm confidence. He showed Peter's original will. He explained the deception. He revealed how the land, the house, and the business were never meant to be handed over while I was still alive. The judge listened. He was quiet. Too quiet. At the end of the session, the judge leaned forward and said, "This matter is not only a legal one, it is a moral one. The final hearing will be set for next month." Until then, no changes to ownership or titles are to be made. We walked out of the courtroom into the afternoon sun. Margaret squeezed my hand. We made progress today. But I didn't feel like celebrating. Because Clara's words haunted me. We did worse than you think. That night, I lay awake on Margaret's floor again. My back ached. My heart ached even more. Then I remembered something. Peter used to keep a hidden journal. He called it the legacy book. He wrote in it almost every week. His dreams. His goals. His worries about David growing cold. His ideas for how to secure our family's future. Maybe, just maybe, there was something in there. Something that could prove how he felt about me. Something that would back up the will. Something David and Linda didn't know about. I sat up in the dark and whispered, "Margaret, we need to go back again." She turned in her sleep. "What?" "Peter's journal. It might still be hidden in the old toolbox in the shed. They wouldn't think to look there." "Grace," she said sleepily, "you'll get yourself arrested." "I don't care anymore." I got up, dressed, and tucked the will into my blouse. An hour later, we were standing outside the old shed behind the house. I forced the door open with a small crowbar Margaret borrowed from her cousin. The hinges screamed, but we slipped inside. The air was thick with dust and memories. There in the corner, under an old tire, was Peter's green toolbox. I opened it. And there it was. The journal. Worn, cracked, but still whole. I opened to the first page. "If anything ever happens to me, Grace must never be left without a place to call home. She is my soul, my partner, and the reason this family stands." I clutched the book to my chest and wept. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered, and a voice barked from behind us. "Who's in there?" A security guard stepped into the shed with a big stick. I froze. "Get out. Now," Margaret shouted. "Wait. Wait." We were just. He lunged toward us. We turned and ran. As we scrambled out of the shed and into the night, I heard him shout, "I'm calling the police." We ran through the darkness like two scared children, our slippers slapping the wet ground, our breath ragged and sharp. Margaret held her wrapper with one hand and my arm with the other, dragging me along even when my legs threatened to give out. Behind us, the night guard's voice echoed, "Come back here. You're trespassing." But we didn't stop. Not until we reached the edge of the bush path that led to her compound. Once we were out of sight, we bent over, both of us panting. I clutched Peter's journal to my chest like it was my last piece of breath. "Are you okay?" Margaret asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "I should be," I replied, my voice shaking. "But I'm not. I'm tired, Margaret. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving I matter to people who once lived under my wings." We got back into her home just before dawn broke. The rooster crowed like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't an old woman being hunted like a thief for trying to protect her own name. Margaret sat me down and gave me water. I opened the journal again with trembling fingers. Page after page, Peter's love poured through his words. Grace carried this family. Even when I was weak, she was strong. If David forgets her value, then I have failed as a father. Another entry read, "I fear Linda's influence on David. He's not the same anymore. If anything happens to me, Grace must be protected. I trust her more than anyone." I burst into tears. My husband, he saw it coming. Somehow he knew. "Margaret," I whispered, "they erased my name, but they can't erase his words." By noon, we took both the will and the journal to Mr. Thomas. His eyes widened as he read Peter's words. "This journal, this changes everything," he said. "This shows clear intent. It will back up the will in court and challenge their false documents." "But will the court believe it?" I asked. "They will," he assured me. "Because this isn't just emotional writing. It's a testament, a voice from the grave. And no one can silence that." Just as he finished speaking, his secretary knocked on the door. "Sir, you have a visitor." The door opened, and David walked in. My heart dropped. He looked at me like I was a stranger, then turned to Mr. Thomas. "I came to offer a solution," he said coldly. I glared at him. "You're not here to make peace. You're here because you're scared." He ignored me and handed Mr. Thomas a paper. "We're offering her a small settlement. Cash. Enough for her to live in comfort somewhere else." But she gives up all claims to the house and land. I stood up slowly. You want to pay me to disappear? I said, trembling. After I gave you everything? After I wiped your tears, fed you with my own hands, and watched your father die while holding mine? David didn't flinch. I'm giving you a chance to walk away with something. You'll lose in court. We have newer titles and the system favors us now. Mr. Thomas folded his arms. Your mother has a will and a journal. You have greed and lies. Let's see what the system favors. David scoffed, then looked at me. Take the offer, mother. Because once we win, you'll be left with nothing. Not even your name. Then he walked out. I didn't cry. Not this time. Because I realized something. David wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of the truth. Later that night, Margaret and I sat outside under the stars. I never thought my own child would treat me like an enemy, I said. I carried him in my womb, gave him life, and now he wants me gone like I'm a weed growing where it doesn't belong. Margaret nodded. You are not alone, Grace. Many mothers carry wounds like yours, but yours is fresh, deep, and loud. I looked at the sky and whispered, when did love turn into betrayal? Then I heard my phone buzz. A message. It was from Clara. Just one sentence. Grandma, I found something. Please meet me tomorrow alone. Don't tell anyone. My fingers froze over the screen. Margaret leaned over. What is it? I showed her the message. Her eyes narrowed. Do you think it's a trap? I shook my head. I don't know. But if there's a chance she's still my granddaughter, if there's still one drop of truth left in her, I have to go. And as I lay down to sleep that night, the question hung over me like a heavy cloud. What did Clara find? And why did she reach out now? The next morning, the air felt heavier than usual. The sky was gray, and the birds didn't sing like they used to. It was like even the heavens knew something was about to change. I wore my old brown shawl, the one Peter gave me during our 30th anniversary, and tied my scarf tightly around my head. I didn't know what to expect from Clara, but I was ready. Margaret begged me not to go alone. Let me come with you, she said, grabbing her shoes. I shook my head. She said I should come alone. And I need to hear it from her without anyone else around. Maybe there's still a piece of the little girl I raised left in her. We agreed to meet in the old park, the one where I used to take Clara when she was just 4. I remember her tiny hands holding my fingers, her eyes lighting up every time she saw butterflies. But today those memories felt like lies. When I arrived at the park, Clara was already sitting on the old green bench. She had her arms folded, her shoulders hunched like someone carrying a heavy secret. I approached her slowly. She didn't look up. Clara, I said gently. She finally turned. Her eyes were red. Grandma, I'm sorry. I paused. That word sorry held so much weight. Yet I didn't know if it was real or another trick. She took a deep breath and reached into her bag. I didn't know they were going to do all this, she said. I knew they'd change the papers. I heard things at night. Dad and Mom talking about taking over early and removing the old woman from the picture. But I didn't think they'd actually erase your name. Esther here. She looked so young, so broken. I found this last night, she said, handing me a brown envelope. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photocopy of another document, Peter's power of attorney, dated 3 months before he passed. It clearly showed my name, legally giving me control over his decisions if he became too ill to manage. This is real? I asked. Clara nodded. They never submitted it. They hid it after he died. If you show this in court, it'll prove everything. You had legal authority when they stole everything from you. Tears filled my eyes. I touched her hand gently. Why now, Clara? Why come to me now? She bit her lip. Because last night I saw an old photo in the drawer. You were holding me on your lap. I was laughing, you were smiling. I remembered how safe I felt with you. Her voice cracked. I don't know when we became like this. I miss you. My heart squeezed. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to forgive her right there. But I also knew that truth needed more than just words. Clara, I said, if you're really sorry, then testify in court. Tell the judge what you heard. Show them this paper and speak the truth. She froze. Testify. Yes, I said firmly. That's the only way to fix this. She looked away. Dad will never forgive me. I stood. Then you have to decide what matters more. Doing what's easy or doing what's right. She didn't answer. I left her sitting there. When I returned home to Margaret's place, I gave the new document to Mr. Thomas. His eyes widened as he read it. This seals it, he said. With this and the will and the journal, there's no way the court can deny your case now. I smiled weakly, but inside I felt sick, because I still didn't know if Clara would stand with me. The next week, court resumed. David walked in like a king. Linda followed, cold as ever. I sat quietly with my papers, breathing slowly, praying Peter's spirit would sit beside me. The judge called the room to order. And then the door opened. Clara stepped in. Everyone turned. She walked to the front, holding the envelope tight in her hands. Your Honor, she said. I have something to submit. Gasps filled the room. David's face turned pale. Linda jumped from her seat. Clara, no. David barked. But she looked straight at the judge. My grandmother is telling the truth. My parents hid this. And I can no longer be part of it. She handed over the power of attorney. The judge raised his brows, examined the document, and nodded slowly. I'll need time to verify this, but this could change the entire ruling. Linda stormed out of the room. David sat with his head in his hands. And I? I finally breathed again. Outside the courtroom, I met Clara under a tree. I'm proud of you, I said softly. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I just hope it's not too late. I touched her cheek. Truth never comes late. It comes when it's needed most. Just then my phone rang. It was Margaret. Her voice was shaking. Grace, you need to come home now. What happened? I asked. There was a pause. They've broken into my house. Someone's ransacked your things. The journal. The documents, they're gone. My heart stopped. Gone. No. Not now. I turned to Clara. They've taken everything. Clara's eyes widened. No, Grandma. They're trying to destroy the case. I whispered. We need to get back now. Before they wipe me out completely. But just when I thought we had won a small victory, when I believed the truth was finally louder than the lies, something else happened. Natalie and I were in her office, holding the printed still frame from the security footage that clearly showed me inside the shelter at the time of the crash. She was organizing files, confident this would end the false witness claim. I was beginning to breathe again, starting to feel the weight lift ever so slightly. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, scanned the screen, and froze. Her face changed. Natalie? I asked. She swallowed hard. It's from the court. They've just approved an emergency motion. The opposing counsel is pushing for your immediate arrest on the grounds of obstruction and endangerment. I stood there in disbelief. What? But the footage. They haven't seen it yet. We were going to submit it tomorrow. But Rachel's lawyer jumped ahead. He claimed you were trying to hide something, and now they want you in custody. My legs felt weak. Am I going to jail tonight? Natalie grabbed her bag and stood. No. Not if I can stop it. She rushed me out the back of the office and into her car. We drove straight to the courthouse. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold them under my thighs. I'd lived through pain, through betrayal, through homelessness. But this was terror I couldn't explain. At the court, Natalie moved like a storm, straight into the judge's chamber. I sat outside on the cold bench, staring at the wall, whispering a quiet prayer. Lord, I've lost everything. Please don't let them take my freedom too. After what felt like an hour, Natalie came back out. Her face was pale but focused. They've granted us a 48-hour hold on the arrest order, pending review of the footage, she said. But Grace, this is war now. I nodded slowly. This was never just about the law, I said. They want to break my spirit. But I've lived too long to let anyone steal what little dignity I have left. She looked at me, her eyes softening. We'll file the footage. We'll expose the false witness. And we'll ask for the entire case to be reviewed again. But you need to be ready, Grace. They're not going to stop. And they didn't. That evening, someone vandalized the shelter wall with red paint. Liar was written in large, messy letters. The staff was horrified. Some volunteers pulled me aside. "We love you, Mama Grace. But maybe it's safer if you're not here anymore. We don't want trouble to follow." That night, I packed my few belongings and left. Again. Homeless. Again. But this time I didn't cry. I found a small bench at the park downtown and sat there watching the stars. Cold wind brushed my cheeks, but my heart didn't tremble like it used to. I whispered to the night, "They can take my bed, but they'll never take my truth." Around midnight, a voice broke the silence. "Mama Grace." I looked up. It was Lily. She was standing there in her pajamas, coat thrown over her shoulders, holding a flashlight. Her face was flushed, eyes wet with tears. "What are you doing here?" I asked, standing quickly. She ran into my arms. "I ran away," she sobbed. "Daddy said you were going to jail, and that you're evil. But I know they're lying. I saw a letter in the drawer. I saw everything. Grandma, they've been hiding your gifts. Your drawings. Your voice messages." I held her tight, my body shaking for the first time that night, not from fear, but from emotion. She looked up at me. "Take me with you. Please. I don't want to stay there anymore." I knelt down, holding her shoulders gently. "I can't, sweetheart. I'd never want you to get hurt. But you have to go back for now." "No," she shouted, desperate. "They're not my real family anymore. You are." I hugged her tightly again, then looked around the park. We couldn't stay out in the open. So I took her to Natalie's office. Natalie gasped when she saw us, quickly pulling Lily inside and wrapping her in a blanket. "I'll call social services," she said. "This could actually help us. If Lily testifies, if she's willing to speak, the court will listen." Lily looked up, wiping her nose. "I'll tell them everything." I looked at Natalie. "Are you sure this won't make it worse for her?" Natalie nodded. "If we do this right, it could change everything. Her voice could be the key." But just before I could answer, Natalie's phone buzzed again. She checked the screen and looked at me with panic. "Grace, they've filed a missing person report for Lily. They think you kidnapped her." I felt my stomach drop. "Police are already looking for you," she added. Outside, I heard the first whoop of a siren echoing in the distance. They were coming. Again. Not just for my name. This time. For my freedom. The sirens grew louder with each passing second. My heart thumped so hard it echoed in my ears. Lily clung to me tightly, her small hands digging into my back. Natalie peeked through the blinds, then turned to us quickly. "We don't have time. Grace, you need to hide. Now." I looked at her dazed. "I didn't take her. I didn't even know she would come." I know," Natalie cut in, grabbing a blanket and tossing it toward the supply closet. "But they don't care about the truth right now. All they need is a reason to put you in cuffs." Lily was crying silently now, her arms wrapped around my waist. I kissed her forehead gently, then whispered, "Do what Natalie says, baby. Just trust me, okay?" She nodded slowly. Natalie led me into the closet, buried me behind a tall shelf filled with boxes, and pulled the door almost shut, just enough for me to breathe. Seconds later, loud knocks shook the office walls. "Open up. Police." I heard the door swing open. "This is a private office," Natalie said firmly. "What's this about?" "We have a report of a missing child. A minor named Lily Taylor was last seen leaving her father's house. Witnesses say she came here. I'm her legal representative. And yes, she came to my office. Alone. On foot. She is safe. And no, she has not been taken." The officer's voice dropped. "Where is the woman, Grace Miller? We have reason to believe she may be hiding here. We were told she has manipulated the child." I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. So now I was not just a liar but a kidnapper too. Natalie didn't waver. "There is no manipulation. That child came to us voluntarily. She expressed fear for her safety, and as her advocate, I've contacted Child Protective Services. She's under my supervision now." "Still," the officer insisted, "we need to check the premises." Footsteps thundered through the office. Doors opening. Furniture shifting. My breath caught in my throat. I clutched my chest, praying silently. "Lord, please don't let them take me. Not yet. Not like this." Then just as quickly as they came, the noise stopped. I heard Natalie's voice again. She's not here. And until you have a warrant or official custody order, you are not allowed to remove this child from my office. If you try, I will sue your department for harassment and negligence. There was silence. Then the officers left. The door closed again. A moment later, Natalie opened the closet. You're okay, she whispered. They're gone. For now. I stepped out slowly, legs trembling. I can't keep doing this, I said, exhausted. They'll never stop. No matter what I do. Natalie looked me dead in the eye. Then it's time we stop running. It's time we put them on the defensive. She sat me down with a fresh cup of tea and opened her laptop. We're filing a counter case. False accusations. Emotional distress. Harassment. And we're calling Lily as a primary witness.
Esther daher.
She's just a child. She's the only one whose voice they didn't expect to rise. The next morning, Natalie filed the motion in court. Word spread like wildfire. Suddenly the headlines shifted. Granddaughter comes to grandma's defense. Says mother lied about abuse. Shelter confirms Grace Miller was inside during crash. New evidence surfaces in ongoing family legal battle. And for the first time people started listening again. Lily sat in a protected witness hearing a week later. She told them everything. How Rachel insulted me, hid my letters, threw away gifts, and lied to make me look like a villain. She told the court that her father had changed, that he didn't treat me with love, and that she had seen Rachel drive away that night in a fury. Her words pierced the courtroom like arrows. The judge leaned back slowly, taking notes. Rachel's lawyer looked nervous for the first time. Then came the real turning point. Natalie played the security footage. The moment it showed me, inside the shelter kitchen at the exact moment Rachel's car crashed, the judge turned to Rachel's lawyer and said, "Are you still prepared to argue that Ms. Miller was outside threatening the plaintiff at the time of the incident?" The lawyer stuttered, then finally said, "No, Your Honor. That was the beginning of the end." The judge ordered all charges against me dropped immediately. My name was cleared in front of everyone. The defamation case was dismissed. The court declared that no evidence supported Rachel's claim. Outside the courtroom, the media rushed toward us. "Mama Grace, how does it feel to win?" I took a deep breath, looking into the cameras. I didn't win because I wanted revenge. I stood up because I had to. Because no woman, no mother, deserves to be broken, beaten, and then forgotten. I spoke up because silence only feeds abuse. The crowd applauded. Some wept. Lily held my hand tightly, smiling up at me. But just when I thought the storm was over, Natalie tapped my arm gently. "Grace," she whispered, "there's something else." "What is it?" She looked down. "Rachel is suing Lily's school now. She wants full custody of all 3 children. And she's demanding a court order to ban you from seeing them ever again." The victory I'd just tasted, now hanging by a thread. Because Rachel's next move was to erase me completely. I sat in stunned silence. My heart, still fluttering from the relief of winning the court case, suddenly plummeted into darkness. The word custody rang in my ears like a cruel bell. But the last part, ban me from seeing the children ever again, that shattered me. I looked at Lily, still holding my hand, her smile slowly fading as she watched my face change. "She wants to take them away from me completely?" I whispered to Natalie. Natalie nodded, her face drawn. "Rachel is arguing that your presence is a toxic influence on the children, especially Lily. She claims you manipulated her emotionally and used her in your legal battle." "That's not true," Lily snapped. "She didn't use me. I begged to speak. I wanted to help." "I know," Natalie said gently, "and we have proof of that. But Rachel has resources, connections, and now that she's lost in court once, she's going to fight even harder. This time, it's not about money or public shame. It's about total control." I took a deep breath and stood, though my legs were shaking. "Then we fight harder too. She wants to erase me? Let her try. Because I will not let those children grow up believing that love is control and silence is safety." Over the next week, Rachel's attack intensified. She filed official complaints against the school for allowing me to visit. She posted online, sharing carefully edited videos again, this time of Lily hugging me, making it look staged. She had people flooding the internet with lies. that I was brainwashing my grandchildren, that I had a long history of mental instability, that I was unfit to even be called a grandmother. Even some distant family members, cousins I hadn't seen in years, started speaking up on her behalf, probably promised favors or scared into silence. Felt like a second war. Only this time the battlefield was my right to love. One morning, Lily came running into Natalie's office again, her cheeks red and wet from crying. "They took my brothers away," she sobbed, collapsing into my lap. "What?" I asked, horrified. "Rachel sent them to stay with her sister out of town. She says they're safer away from me. She told them I was dangerous now because of you." I wrapped my arms around her. She cried into my chest, and I held her like I did when she was a baby, rocking back and forth, whispering, "I'm here, my baby. I'm here." I looked up at Natalie. "She's isolating Lily one step at a time." Natalie nodded grimly. "She's building a narrative that you're poisoning the children against their parents. If she can prove emotional manipulation, the judge may agree to the ban." "Then we need to show the truth," I said. "Not in documents. Not just in courtrooms. We need people to hear from Lily." Natalie paused. "You want to go public again?" "Yes," I said firmly. "But not just me this time. Us." That night, Natalie helped us record a video, simple, quiet, honest. I sat beside Lily on a worn-out couch. The camera rolled. I didn't wear makeup or fix my hair. I wanted the world to see me as I was. I looked into the lens and said, "I'm Grace Miller. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. And I'm not perfect. But what I gave to my family was everything." Then Lily spoke, her voice shaky but clear. "My name is Lily. I'm Dziesiąte. And I love my grandma. She didn't hurt me. She saved me. I want to live where I feel safe. And that's with her." We posted the video online. It spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours we had over 100,000 views. Strangers began reaching out. People who had been separated from loved ones by lies, manipulation, and power plays. Women wrote in saying they saw themselves in me. Children, now grown, wrote about being kept away from grandparents who loved them. The tide was turning again. But Rachel wasn't done. The night before the final custody hearing, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was her. "Rachel." Her voice was cold and slow. "You've made a mess, Grace. But it's okay. I'll fix it. After tomorrow you'll never lay eyes on those kids again. No more stories. No more camera tears. You'll disappear, just like you should have years ago." I didn't say a word. I just hung up. But that call told me one thing for sure: she was afraid. Afraid of what happens when the truth finally refuses to be silenced. The day of the final hearing arrived. Natalie held my hand as we walked into the courtroom. Lily was there too, brave as ever, sitting between a court guardian and a child advocate. Her eyes searched for mine. When they found me, she smiled, just enough to remind me why I was still standing. Rachel entered last, dressed sharply, walking with a cane from the crash, her lawyer close behind. But her face, it didn't hold the same power anymore. Not to me. This wasn't the same Grace she threw out onto the porch months ago. This was a woman who had been broken, beaten, but was still standing, still loving, still fighting, still undefeated. The judge entered. The room stood. And then it began. Rachel's lawyer went first, spinning tales, painting me as a villain with a soft face and a dangerous heart. They called my love emotional bait. They claimed my influence on Lily was destructive and divisive. Rachel even took the stand herself, delivering a well-rehearsed performance of fake concern and tears. But the moment of truth came when Natalie stood. She played the video of Rachel's crash again. The one where I was inside the shelter. She played the radio broadcast where I told my story. Not to harm, but to heal. She showed proof of my donations, my volunteer work, my time spent helping other women in pain. And then she called Lily. Gasps rippled through the room. Lily stood tall. Her voice shook a little, but her eyes were clear. She told the truth. Every detail. What her home felt like. What I meant to her. And what she wanted for her future. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, including the judge. He called for a short recess. Natalie and I stepped into the hallway. We didn't speak. We just sat. Then the door opened. A clerk stepped out. "Ms. Miller? You're needed inside." We stood. My heart thundered in my chest. It was time. But I had no idea that what waited in that courtroom was not just a ruling. It was a bombshell revelation that would change everything. The air in the courtroom felt frozen. I held Lily's hand as we walked back inside, Natalie by my side. Every pair of eyes followed us, curious, waiting. Rachel sat tall, her lips tight, her cane resting neatly against her chair like a trophy of her pain. But something was different. When the judge returned and sat down, I noticed his expression had changed. It was no longer just serious. It was heavy, as if something more had entered the room. He cleared his throat and spoke. "Before I give my final decision, the court has received new evidence this morning, from an anonymous source." Whispers stirred across the room. Rachel shifted uncomfortably. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering frantically. Her face twitched. The judge continued. "It is a recorded phone conversation between the plaintiff, Rachel Taylor, and an unknown male voice, dated 2 nights before her car accident." He pressed a button on his computer. A speaker on the judge's bench crackled to life. Then a voice, Rachel's voice, filled the room. "I don't care how we do it. She needs to be gone. You understand me? If I have to crash the car in front of that shelter to make it look like she threatened me, then so be it. Grace ruined everything. I'll make sure they bury her before they believe her." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. Rachel's face drained of color. She leapt to her feet. "That's not me. That's edited. Your Honor, Sit down, Mrs. Taylor," the judge ordered firmly. "This audio has been verified. We also received a copy of the original voice memo from the sender. And based on this evidence, the court is launching an immediate investigation into perjury and child manipulation." Rachel collapsed back into her seat, trembling. I couldn't move. I stared straight ahead, unable to process what I had just heard. She had planned the crash. She had tried to frame me. Natalie reached for my hand and whispered, "It's over." The judge turned toward me. "Ms. Grace Miller, this court finds that there is no basis for restricting your contact with your grandchildren. In fact, based on the testimonies and evidence, it is clear that your presence provides emotional safety and love." He looked over at Lily, who was now smiling brightly. "You young lady are brave, and I hope the world hears your story." Then he looked back at me and said something I will never forget. "Ms. Miller, you may have been broken. You may have been beaten. But you were never defeated. You stood in truth even when the world turned against you. And today, this court recognizes your strength and your right to be called Grandma." Tears streamed down my face. Lily jumped into my arms. The courtroom erupted with quiet applause. Not loud, not dramatic, but full of respect. The kind you can feel in your bones. Rachel was escorted out in silence. Her lawyer followed closely, phone glued to his ear. I held Lily tightly, burying my face in her soft curls, breathing her in like a miracle. I had lost everything, but I gained back the one thing they tried so hard to steal: my legacy. Weeks later, I stood in the same church where I had once broken down in tears. This time I was holding Lily's hand, surrounded by women I'd helped, by strangers who'd become family, by those who finally believed. I spoke on the altar, voice firm. To every mother who was cast aside, to every grandmother who was told she was too old to matter, your story isn't over. I am living proof. You may be broken. You may be beaten. But if you hold on to truth, you will never be defeated. And as the crowd stood in applause, Lily whispered in my ear, "You're my hero, Grandma." I kissed her forehead and smiled. I was no longer forgotten. I was found. I was free. I was Grace. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stories that speak the truth, heal the soul, and give strength to the forgotten.